One of the reasons why most late identified autistics are stuck in the chronic cycle burnout trap and not seeing a long-lasting restoration of energy, executive function, and emotional regulation is because they are trying to fix the problem from the outside by unplugging from social media, hitting pause on daily tasks and chores, or trying to stem more or unmask. And before you know it, you found yourself right back in burnout a few weeks or months later after returning to your usual routine. In this episode, what we're going to talk about is how to get rid of all those problems and begin creating a self-care plan from the inside out that will give you a feeling of self-love and compassion you've never experienced before, balancing your daily energy management, and a life that is no longer reactive and overwhelmed by anxiety and self-criticism, but joy, peace, and freedom. So if that interests you, keep on listening. Hi, I'm Carol Jean Whittington, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in life and relationships as a late identified autistic by unveiling who you are, what you love, creating balance, and being the leader and creator of your best life. Get ready, because this is where we go against the mainstream. We say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to who we are in order to create a joy-filled, balanced, and more neurodistinct world. Ubuntu. Welcome to Mind Your Autistic Brain. Welcome. Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Mind Your Autistic Brain talk show. Today, we are talking all about burnout, my favorite thing to talk about. But today, we're going to talk specifically about self-care. It is a very simple concept. You may have heard me talk about this concept before, and I'm willing to bet that if you are struggling burned out autistic newbie and you've tried all those self-care suggestions that come up in your feed, but end up right back in burnout a few weeks or months later, you don't even understand what it really is or how to implement it. I'm willing to bet that you don't have a self-care plan from the inside out. And what a self-care plan from the inside out is starting your self-care from inside yourself, not all the external self-care like cucumber slices or getting a massage or a manicure. When you start your self-care from the inside out, you create a foundation of love, compassion, and kindness for yourself that radiates out into your everyday activities that allows you to create and maintain your energy, decrease your anxiety and overwhelm, and keeps you out of the chronic cycle burnout trap. And what a self-care plan from the inside out does is it gives you the daily framework that you've never had before that will allow you to not just balance your energy and emotions, but it will give you a life that is no longer in the cycle burnout trap, but a life that is authentically yours and balanced for the first time ever. We know we need rest, breaks in our day, self-care of our bodies and minds, but the problem is all of these things come from the outside. But when we focus on a self-care plan from the inside out, we get to create an internal space for our own emotions and a way to live our lives as the authentically autistic people we are, and not a masked version of ourselves. Now, I want you to imagine for a second living your life where falling into the chronic cycle burnout trap every few weeks or months no longer exists. If you were able to create a self-care plan from the inside out, where it created a feeling of love, compassion, and space for your own emotions and feelings to live a life that is authentically and autistically yours, where you were looking at yourself in the mirror and not seeing your flaws, but seeing someone you dearly love, then creating your burned out to balanced life starts with the unveiling method and the free 2-part self-care workshop and discussion sessions this month, beginning next Friday, September 10th. We all know we need self-care, but the problem is when most go to do self-care, they use tactics like taking a social media break or just vegging out to Netflix or Xbox gaming for an hour or so on end. These tactics do work and they do make you feel better temporarily, but they aren't giving you a balanced life where you have energy, feel good on a regular basis, and are living your authentic best autistic life. But I'm telling you right now that if you are creating a self-care plan from the inside out, that if you do this, your life will no longer be cycling through autistic burnout, and you will be experiencing energy, joy, a good night's sleep, and even things you didn't know were possible. There are a few pieces we want to focus and dial in on, and a few elements that need to work together to create your self-care plan from the inside out. But I want to start by talking about the chronic cycle burnout trap. If you are listening to this episode, you may find yourself in this trap. In fact, I'm willing to bet that about 90% of struggling burned out autistic newbies live within this chronic cycle burnout trap. And there are a couple of reasons why. They have tried the self-care suggestions they see on social media. They've tried just scaling back, and often to the point of catatonic hibernation for a few days. I've tried that. But these are all external band-aids that can't be maintained over the long term. So you end up right back in burnout a few weeks or months later, only to start all over again with the same tactics. And you do need to do this. You need to schedule breaks for yourself and self-care. But what you haven't done, and we talk about this in our Unveiling Method program, what we haven't done is approach our burnout and self-care from the inside out. What happens is so many people get stuck in this trap where they think self-care is just taking care of your body needs and shutting out the world. But today, we know that we are autistic and that none of the self-care external band-aids really solve our chronic cycle burnout issues. So now, when you take a social media break or veg out to Netflix, there are only a few weeks or months where this helps and lasts before you're right back into burnout territory, starting all over again. Now, you might have a different self-care process than everyone else, but are you getting long-term energy, daily balance in your emotions and sensory sensitivities, and staying out of burnout? And what that means is that when you do take self-care steps, a social media break or disconnect from life for a few days, do you feel restored, balanced, and ready to face your life without slipping back into burnout? This is what I call the burnout loop of death. That's right, burnout loop of death, because literally it can kill you. It is what I call the burned out autistic newbie trap, where you are only doing the self-care options that come from the outside. But because you are doing these external self-care, like everyone else, you're falling right back into burnout, even though you were doing some things differently. And I'm willing to bet that if you are listening to this episode, you've probably had thoughts like, I'm doing all the things everyone is saying to do. And I'm trying to self-care. I'm doing everything that's on these lists. I'm wearing no noise-canceling headphones. I'm wearing clothing that makes me feel good. I'm listening to music and stimming. Why do I keep getting into burnout? Or why can't I seem to get out of burnout for more than just a short time? Then I'm willing to bet that you have fallen into this burnout loop of death, where you are looking for relief from disconnecting from people, sounds, work, chores, or even your environment. What we aren't looking at is, what does self-care actually mean? And what does it mean to us as autistics? Now, when we look at the social media accounts of most people, you know what we don't see? We don't see a post saying, taking a social media break to recover from burnout. Why? If taking a few days off social media were truly the best way to maintain your energy and balance, then why don't we have social media breaks topping the charts for most discussed ways to live a balanced life? Now, I will say we do see the occasional post from a friend or family member that says they're taking a social media break for reasons like major life events. But we don't see this as the solution to living a fully balanced life in a way to maintain your energy as a rule of thumb. I say that social media breaks are very helpful and give your brain and body a rest from that programmed dopamine hit Hello to all my ADHD friends out there. But we do have a self-care plan from the inside out in the unveiling method that will give you a way to stay out of those temporary fixes. What are those people who stay out of chronic burnout doing? They have a foundation of self-love and compassion. They know versus understand what real self-care from the inside out is in their life. They don't compare themselves to everyone else. It is about loving yourself and knowing how to create energy versus just expending it. It is about getting out of the burnout loop using self-care that starts on the inside. It is about seeing self-care differently. If someone has a perspective on self-care and life that is causing suffering, and they think this is the way things are supposed to be because they haven't seen other perspectives, and this discussion can free you from this trap, this is the most valuable conversation I can have with you. Self-care is an art form. There is a level of mastery that goes into this, but it all starts from creating a self-care plan from the inside out. When I self-care, what I do every day, I have reoccurring elements that I am using every single time. Self-love and compassion, knowing what my burnout signposts are, setting boundaries with my time and who I spend it with, knowing where I gain energy and where I lose it. There's a lot that goes into creating this self-care plan, but a self-care plan from the inside out is what gives you balance and joy every day. Most people will not do this. Most people will not create a self-care plan from the inside out because they feel like they don't know where to start. But you should start. You should take the time to invest in how you live your life. You get to choose how you live your life from a place of chronic cycle burnout or from a place where you have a plan that allows you to be the best you. So let's talk about self-care from the inside out. Now, again, we are having the first in this two-part free workshop and discussion series on self-care next Friday, September 10th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, where we will be going deeper into self-care in these two free workshop and discussion sessions. But what I want to do now is I want to go over it and give you those elements so that you're ready for those self-care workshop and discussions. So when we create a self-care plan from the inside out, there is one main element that is the foundation, which I am sharing with you today. This element is part of an exercise I call reflection work. Reflection work is based in neuroscience and the use of the mirror neuron network and psychology using the intention of self-compassion. Reflection work does two things. Number one, it helps us develop a sense of self, of who we are in the world. And as late identified autistics, that's a new one for us. Two, reflection work allows us to shift our perspective and, most importantly, how we look at ourselves. When we look at ourselves with kind intention, it reduces anxiety and self-criticism. The mainstream media says self-care is asking for help, taking a step back, forgiving yourself, or staying at home, even saying no. But I've always had an issue with that. And my issue is that those are all external solutions that don't address the root cause of the problem for most late identified autistics. And when you do this, you are also perpetuating the broken beliefs that doing those things works. And that leads you to having a feeling that you aren't doing it right or that you are broken because it doesn't work for you long term and you can't see how to fix it from the outside. But it is a very easy fix. All you're going to do is begin to shift your internal identity with a simple exercise I call reflection work. You already do this every day. You look in the mirror, you see yourself. This is something you are already doing, but not this way. Seeing things through a new lens is something you have already experienced as a late identified autistic. The way you saw your entire life up to the point you learned you were autistic completely changed with one simple shift in your perspective. You are autistic. You know how transformational that one shift has been in your life and how you see yourself. Reflection work is this simple exercise. So each day, I want you to look at yourself in the mirror. It can be your bathroom mirror or the back of your bedroom door. Before you look at yourself in the mirror, set your intention. I am going to look at myself with kindness and love. Then look at yourself in the mirror. Lovingly look into your own eyes and say, I love you. I love myself. You can even say, hey, I love you, and use your name, like I love Carol Jean. You can think it, but there is greater connection when you engage the auditory component and you say it aloud in the beginning. Say this 10 times. Do this 3 times per day with intention. Find a trigger to help you remember to do this exercise each day. It can be that you do it when you brush your teeth or when you put in or take out your contacts. Now, this is just one solution using reflection work. There are other things like curating your external environment, self-talk, and crafting internal and external boundaries, for example. I have the unveiling method that teaches these and more. I don't think I am a self-care or burnout expert. I am the creator of the unveiling method. That is what people know me for. That is my unique solution. That is the thing that will fix the problem for the struggling, burned out autistic newbie. And people know that. So now that I can incorporate my reflection work inside my self-care plan from the inside out, guess what starts to happen? You begin to see yourself differently. You begin to feel love for yourself. You begin to live a more authentic life where you are being the fully autistic you. Then my unique solution, the unveiling method, is the thing that bridges that gap between the struggling, burned out autistic newbie and the thriving, authentic autistic. When you have a self-care plan from the inside out and you realize that doing reflection work sets the foundation to stay out of burnout, the more your authentic autistic you shines through. And you're going to see and feel this, and it becomes really, really powerful. So the question is, well, Carol Jean, I get this whole self-care plan from the inside out. I understand that, but how do I build in the external environment piece? What do I do? How do I create an external environment that works with this new internal piece? This is a process. There is a process to this. One of the reasons that most people have struggles with self-care in the external environment is because there's actually 2 external things you need to take into consideration. And most people don't take either one of them into consideration when creating a self-care plan. Number 1, most people never take into consideration how their external spaces impact how they are actually feeling and thinking. They're not intentional with it. And this might be you. And if it is you, you are that struggling, burned out autistic newbie. What this is you are self-caring, and because you are disconnecting from the world and responsibilities for a few days, taking some stresses off your plate, you feel a bit better. So you then return to your usual routine and life. The reason why those temporary self-care actions all create problems is because you are returning back to exactly what you were doing that led to burnout in the first place. And you are letting how you see yourself and what you think you should be doing compared to others dictate your internal world and your external environment. And when you are comparing yourself to others, viewing yourself as broken and not looking at all the elements, the problem is that you wind up back in the burnout loop of death. For example, Paul from Asperger's from the Inside describes his mini burnout being one where he gets to the end of his energy and then loses his executive function. And for me, in my life, it can be at the end of a full and wonderful day, but I am physically exhausted. There are invisible elements to self-care, and that is why we have to be intentional with how burnout looks, feels, and shows up in our life, from the mini burnout to the full-blown long burn. We want to use things like reflection work, identifying your unique burnout style, identifying the signposts to restoration from burnout, and those signposts that indicate we are getting close to burnout. And we need it to be part of our self-care plan from the inside out. Simply by starting with the inner foundational elements and doing the reflection work exercise in your mirror and beginning to look at your external environment from a sensory perspective is a start. For example, most people believe that taking a few days off work or from social media get you out of burnout for the long haul. And I think people suffer from that. And I think you might be suffering because of that too. I think it causes late identified autistics to feel that there is no hope, that they are broken in some way, and this is how life is going to be for them. And no one has stepped in and told you something different. So I am stepping in and I'm freeing them from it and freeing you from it and ending that suffering. But it only happens when you are intentional and you focus on your internal self-care and crafting your external environment. And most people don't do that. They go straight to taking a social media break and they don't start with self-love and defining their internal identity after autism identification. They think, if I just unplug from the world or pop on my noise-canceling headphones with my favorite music at the grocery store, I will stay out of burnout. But once you understand what burnout is in your life, your self-care plan from the inside out can go so much deeper. And you can have energy, executive function, emotional balance, and joy. And what starts to happen is you actually begin to integrate you and what works for you into your daily life, which means that when you do this, you are beginning to live your thriving, authentic, autistic life. There are autistics living in balance and not struggling with daily focus challenges, massive executive dysfunction, and who aren't spending days recovering from meltdowns or shutdowns. And there are autistics who aren't in the chronic burnout cycle. There are always invisible elements going on in that thriving, authentic, autistic life that people aren't aware of, but I want to make you aware of it. When you start to identify what these burnout foundations are by these invisible elements and how you are starting to see yourself with compassion and worthy of self-care, why are we not doing the same thing with our self-care plan? If you've had issues with exhaustion, feeling like you have to push through and keep up with everyone around you, I guarantee you have not created a self-care plan from the inside out. You are stuck in that struggling autistic newbie trap. You have not been using reflection work, identifying your burnout signpost or restoration post, or the 7 forms of rest other than sleep. But once you begin to understand that you can start to form a self-care plan from the inside out, now that is only one side of the equation. Hopefully, you have been doing that. If you haven't, it is time to start changing it up and switching it up. That is number one when we start creating a self-care plan from the inside out. We want to live a balanced life where we are authentically our unique autistic selves. You can still take social media breaks, unplug from the world, and veg out to Netflix, but it isn't going to be 100% of what you do. And you can also do the reflection work exercise without having to cancel all your plans and appointments for a few days. There are other things going on as well. We have just been so indoctrinated and conditioned to believe that stepping back from our life is self-care. There are so many more ways to self-care. And I promise you right now, if the only way you know to self-care is through canceling all your plans, you are actually missing the most important way to live a full and balanced daily life. Sometimes creating a self-care plan from the inside out is way more valuable than just saying no to everything. Let's look at the second part of the equation. The first part of the equation is building your internal foundation of self-love and compassion through reflection work. Number 2 is cultivating your external environment. Most people don't do that. Most people do not take into consideration their external environment. I'm sure you've heard of nose blindness. That's when you no longer notice or smell your doggy house or your McDonald's French fry smelling car. But those who are new to your environment, they smell it. The same thing happens with our home and work environments. We become visually blind to the stacks of books or the cluttered surfaces, but our brains do not on a subconscious level. This is really important, and this is a big factor in being autistic. We talk about this in the upcoming free 2-part self-care workshop and discussions beginning next Friday, September 10th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can register for this event in the show notes below or on my Instagram page at Social Autie. We will be going deeper into areas of reflection work that will unlock a connection with yourself you have never had, and you will begin to experience looking at your own body and not criticizing it for maybe the first time ever. It was first for me. That is what happened for me. Just after a few days of doing the reflection work exercise I shared here today, I was blown away. So what happens with a lot of people is they get frustrated with their bedroom and they start throwing out junk, but they never stop to think why they were feeling frustrated with their space in the first place. I used to look at my bedroom and feel like I wanted to run away, and I would just start throwing things into a trash bag only to be back in that same fix a few weeks later. Now, I recognize when I start feeling anxious and claustrophobic in my bedroom, it means I have not been doing my daily clean sweep and pickup. And that is a bigger extension of entering into burnout. It's a signpost. It is one of my signposts. Now that I know what my burnout signposts are, I can better identify why my space impacts my emotions. The other side of this is having clear spaces for my eye and brain to rest adds to my sensory rest. So curating my external environment and creating a space that is manageable is one way to help in this area. There are ways to do this so that you can have that additional rest you need that doesn't have to come from sleep. I can't tell you how important this is. And I am willing to bet that if you have felt frustrated, overwhelmed, or anxious in your spaces, I wager you have not been intentional with either a self-care plan from the inside out or intentionally crafting your external environment to have a clear space for your eyes and brain to rest, or possibly even both. And if it is both, then I really hope you registered for the free 2-part self-care workshop and discussion. Even if it is just one of them, I hope you did. So we have to be able to focus on both. So let's recap where we are on self-care. Self-care begins with a self-care plan from the inside out. And that means beginning with your internal environment and identity using the reflection work exercise. And curating your external environment to have clear spaces for your eyes and brain to rest so that you get energy and restoration from something other than sleep. Some of the things that will happen when this self-care plan from the inside out is completely dialed in is you'll feel more rested. You'll have energy that is sustainable, executive function, and even sleep more soundly. If you aren't getting energy, rest, experiencing balance and emotional regulation, along with feeling content and joyful, then it means you have improvements that you can make within your self-care. Now, those elements include internal environment and external environment, and we will be going deeper into the reflection work and environment in the upcoming free self-care workshop, including some areas of rest that you may not realize impact your energy. But you have to understand that self-care begins from the inside out, and most people never do that. They just try and adjust everything on the outside instead of beginning with reflection work and identifying who they are as a late identified autistic today. So why are we not doing it? And number 2, cultivate your external environment so that you can gain energy and internal calm from your surroundings. Obviously, there is an art form to this, and I have mentioned that a few times. We are premiering the 2-part self-care workshop and discussion series coming up on September 10th, and it is free. But we're doing something pretty unique this time. It isn't just a workshop. It's not just a discussion, but also an open discussion with question and answers at the end. And the reason why we are doing something a little bit unique is because I want to help you incorporate this into your life on a deeper level. I believe in my bones that if you are someone who wants to live a full late identified autistic life, and you want to do it without the heavy masking and camouflaging, and you want to be the leader in your own life, but you also want to be a part of creating change in the world so that autistics are seen as the necessary neurotype to our humanity that we have been created to be, then this is the information that you need. These are the elements that people use, but they aren't telling you, and no one else is out there breaking it down for you. And I'm going to break it down. And I'm going to be doing this in a live workshop and discussion. And we'll be going deeper into reflection work and cultivating your external environment. I will be breaking it down and answering your questions. Remember, this is a completely free live event. I'm going to warn you, I will be going deep and breaking this down for you. So make sure that you book out at least an hour and a half for this. If you loved what we talked about on this episode and you were like, great, how do I do this? Well, make sure you go ahead and register because I taught you a lot of what you should be doing and tried to help lose some mistakes you might be doing and to shift your perspective on certain things. And I was able to provide some value. But now it is time to go a step deeper and show you guys what to do and help you start to get all of this incorporated. I believe to my core that if you really want to make a change and you really want to have that full, thriving, authentic, autistic life, it all starts with self-care from the inside out. But if you are not sure on how to use reflection work, it doesn't matter how good your self-care is. And that's why right now you are taking time off or taking a social media break, I'm guessing, and you're not seeing the results. Because again, canceling your plans for a few days by itself is not the one and only way to stay out of the chronic cycle burnout loop. And there is a list of invisible things, and I want to make those visible to you on this 2-part self-care workshop and discussion free training. But this live question and answer session, that's really going to be where the magic happens. So all I need you to do is go to socialautie.com and you can go ahead and get registered for this free training. This is the first event of its kind here on Mind Your Autistic Brain, and the only one like this year. And I'm not sure when I may be doing this again next year. So make sure you're there now. I'm not saying this is a scarcity tactic. This is truly because there are other topics I already have planned and in the pipeline into next year already, and this isn't one of them. This is all free, and all you have to do is make the time. With that said, hopefully I will see you guys there. And that's it for this episode. Take care, and I'll see you next week as we go into harnessing your energy. Remember, if you have a friend that's a late identified autistic, share this podcast, share this talk show episode, this YouTube video with your friend. Make sure that you help the next person in line. See you next week. If you are someone who likes to help people and share what has made a difference in your life, please share this talk show with a friend and on your social media accounts so that you can be the blessing in another late identified autistic's life. Be sure to tag me at Social Autie so I can personally say thank you. And to help keep the talk show ad-free, please consider becoming a one-time or recurring supporter through either Buy Me a Coffee or the Anchor podcast links in the show notes below. I truly appreciate your support. Thank you for being a listener, and thank you for adding your voice to our story.